Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our today's Fireside chat with Jochen Thewes, CEO of Schenker, and Said Amidi, CEO and founder of Plug and Play Tech Center. My name is Salar Faridi. I am heading our operations here in Hamburg, where we are leading our activities in the fields of supply chain and logistics in Europe, and also diving into topics like new energies and hydrogen. I will be your host today, and I have the pleasure to give you a little introduction about today's agenda, and also a little bit about Plug and Play and the speakers we have today. I hope you are going to enjoy this session, and wanted to thank everyone for taking the time and joining us, especially to our two panelists and speakers of the Fireside chat. For those who would like to get to know a little bit more information about Plug and Play and who haven't heard that much of us, we are based in Silicon Valley. Our history goes way back into the 90s, where we had the unique opportunity to see companies like Google, Dropbox, PayPal, not only being founded in our own building in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto, 165 University Avenue, but also we had the unique opportunity to invest in some of these companies and see them grow. Meanwhile, we fast forward, we have developed to one of the most active investors in the world. We invest in over 200 startups per year, of which some of them have been very successful that you see here. In Europe, our most successful investment was a company called N26 that some of you know very well, and other companies like Rappi, Honey, or Guardian Health. Not only investment is one of our specialities and expertises, but also in the past years, we have developed two more pillars. The one pillar is the pillar of acceleration, where we help startups to grow, help startups to become better with mentoring, with support in all sorts of types, also connecting them to our VC network and our corporate network. Speaking of our corporate network, one of the reasons why we are here today, Schenker is our anchor partner here in Hamburg, one of the founding partners actually here at our European supply chain and logistics location. At our corporate innovation platform, we work closely together with corporations as their extended arm of the innovation unit. We help them to find the right startups for their challenges and use cases. We help them along their innovation roadmap and strategy, and connect them not only with startups and do the tech transfer from multiple industries, but also connect them to a variety of our 500 different partners from over 18 different industries. I'm very proud to show you today also a little new logo here, the maritime logo. We just came back from the launch in Antwerp, where we kicked off our new maritime vertical, which is connected to our supply chain and logistics vertical. But we're also covering more topics like mobility, where we have an office in Stuttgart together, where we work together with Daimler, Porsche, Bosch, and many other OEMs and tier 1 and 2 suppliers. But also topics like health and insurtech are topics that we cover, and many, many more. During the past years, we have not only gained and grown in experience and knowledge, but also in terms of our geographic expansion. We have 35 locations worldwide, where we help local corporations with international startups and an international ecosystem, where we bring them all together and foster the process of innovation together. Our ecosystem includes governments, startups, VCs, mentors, corporations, and many, many more. If you would like to find out more, please get in touch with us. I'm more than happy to give you the long intro and presentation. Now, before we continue, we're going to go to one slide, a little bit about the housekeeping rules. There's not much to know, just one thing: you're able to ask questions. Please don't be shy. Use the Q&A button here. Our team is going to process all of the inbound questions that we get, and I'm at the end try to get as many as possible towards our panelists or fireside chat speakers. Now, I would like to do a little introduction. I think it's not necessary, but due to respect and due to the sake of good order, I would like to introduce our two panelists or speakers today. Jochen Thewes, CEO of DB Schenker. He is an expert in logistics. He has over 20 years of management experience in this industry, has been in various different areas in the world, in Asia, Vietnam, Singapore. He has also been in Brazil, and now he is in the headquarters in Essen and leading one of the largest logistic companies in the world. Jochen, thank you very much for joining us today. And then I would like to, thank you. Then I would like to introduce Saeed Amidi, our CEO and founder of Plug and Play Tech Center, someone who has driven innovation and shaped the world of Silicon Valley together with the ecosystem. Saeed, thank you very much for taking the time to be here. Now I would like to give over to you, and we will see each other later on. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Salar. It's great coming to you from Silicon Valley. And as I mentioned to Jochen, I just arrived last night from London, and I had a very exciting trip in Turin, where we met the Fiat and Ferrari and the auto industry, and then coming from UK, where we saw number of financial services company. And I'm very happy to report that, compared to my last trip 3 months ago, it seems like the whole world is waking up and the whole world is focusing on innovation and digitalization. But Jochen, I wanted to kind of ask you, for me, it was almost 2 years ago in March that the COVID hit, and I wasn't sure exactly what is going to happen in our world, in the logistic and supply chain. But I wanted to ask you, like the first thing that comes to your mind, what happened when the COVID hit, and what was the first phone call you received from one of your large clients? How can you describe that time?
Look, it was actually a very specific moment. I actually remember when that happened, because we normally have our global leadership meetings beginning of the year, where we bring our top 150, 160 leaders together, normally here in Essen, Germany. And I remember that already then, of course, COVID was there, and we had discussions, and are we going to go through with the meeting or not, and who do we invite, who do we not invite, and then we decided to go through with it. At the time, we didn't invite our Chinese colleagues, and it all still seemed really far away. It was a big Chinese thing. Yes, we had the first cases in Germany, but I don't think we really expected that this would come on our doorstep so quickly. And then I remember, normally it's a 2.5-day affair or something like that. And I remember that I think it was on either the first evening or it was on the second day, where my board colleague Thorsten, that is responsible for our air and ocean business, came to me and said, Jochen, effective immediately, they have in principle grounded all passenger flights. Right? I think the US was the one that started, if I'm not mistaken, with the flights going in and out. Right? And obviously that was for us, of course, shocking, no? Because if you consider how much air freight is moved really in passenger flights on belly capacity, etc. But that was the first real, what can I say, impact that hit, no? Where we said, wow, this is massive, this is big, has something that we really haven't seen before. And I remember that moment very, very vividly, right? When he came to me and said, look, this is what just happened. So I still have that very present in my memory.
Like any big news or big challenge, it also creates opportunity. But I would love that if you could describe first, the challenges you were facing initially when you heard this news, and how did you deal with it? How I mean, how did you organize your troops? And of course, you have to respond not only for your own company, but for all your large clients and small clients around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, look, what we did were a couple of things, I would say. I mean, if we looked at our workforce internally, we were in a very fortunate position that actually in 2019, we had made the decision to move all our large global applications in the cloud, which we were one of the first, I would say, in the industry. So we were really able to, in principle, move without headache, really, at least anybody that was administrative office work to remote work, and that worked extremely well. I mean, during the first wave, we probably had up to, at certain times, 30, 40,000 people working remote on our networks, right, which was, of course, tremendous. Nonetheless, we obviously have also warehouses, cross-dock terminals, etc., and there, of course, the safety of our colleagues in the warehouses was of great concern, because also we were learning and starting to understand that, let's say, what does the pandemic really mean? Seems there's a problem. Can you hear me well, or because there was a comment just there?
We can hear you, pretty well. If you speak a little louder, will be better, but we can hear you pretty well.
Will do. Then I'll speak up a bit, so that's better. So that was of course a major change for us, and I think in the beginning we were really faced with a very drastic client behavior because nobody knew what was coming, and in principle ordering stopped. Right, so basically all clients said, well, hold on, we don't know what's going to happen. We stop production. We don't need parts. We don't need anything that really is inbound. So that was, of course, a major disruption for us. Like I said, the second one was that a large part of our air freight capacity simply disappeared. Really, within hours, our capacity was grounded, and we had to make a significant shift into really operating our own flight network. So where we really went out, had to acquire what we would say charter capacity, so take on full flights, set up really our own global network, which we still operate today. So the way we produce air freight has fundamentally changed during this COVID period now. But what was also absolutely extreme was, as we then went into March and April and countries went into lockdown, our domestic capacity in Europe just disappeared, right? I mean, or let's say the demand just disappeared. I remember it was, I think, the third week in March in France, when France went into lockdown, and we really were still on pretty strong volumes. And then Monday, minus 10%, Tuesday, minus 20, Wednesday, minus 30, Thursday, minus 40%. It just completely fell off the cliff. The business was just gone, right? We had nothing left in our networks. So it was a very drastic, very, very heavy impact that we had on our business. And then obviously it took a couple of months until that really only came back, etc. So we had fundamental change at this point.
Very good. I am very pleased that we can work with large organization like Mercedes, Bosch, some pharmaceutical industries like Roche and Bayer. Did at that time you kind of prioritized for medical products, or for what I believe even the German government and some governments around the world got involved and promoted production of COVID products, gloves, covers. How did you really try to prioritize what do you need to get from point A to point B? And, again, I'm sure it was a shock and now moment for you as well as for your big network of clients. But how, did you have a command center in the morning to decide what to do and how to execute?
Yes, we did. We had almost like a war room, for lack of a better word, where we really steered what capacity do we have, what is available, what demand do we have, what goods do we really have, and we also looked very specific at what kind of products can, for example, right again, fly, because a lot of it was urgent, can fly on which aircraft. And as a matter of fact, I mean, we were one of the largest providers actually carrying medical protection gear, masks, the coats, and everything that came with it into Europe at the time. And yes, we prioritized healthcare products, which was very important. But we had a second challenge, that a lot of the governments were not used to procure internationally, right? Because they didn't know how to buy in China. They had no access to China, for example, for the masks, let's just say. So we also brought them together, for example, with the procurement departments of some of our largest customers. You name some of them in the automotive industry or whatever, and say, hey, go to these guys. They know how to buy. They can help you. They can basically tell you how to do. We help with the logistics, but right. So we basically brought them together to make sure to even enable them to get it done, to get quality control done, to negotiate, to do the contracts, etc. Because normally governments, they don't have the setup to do that, right? So it was really more an all-around effort in making this happen and not just moving a product from A to B.
Yes, I absolutely remember that one of our large German, partners had a few visitors from China, and then the breakout happened in their offices, and they were like the first company in Germany who really felt the impact. And I recall I had a fireside chat with them, and within 2 weeks everybody faced the same challenge, but I would say they faced it 2 weeks earlier, similar to people in China who faced it earlier. But at least for my lifetime, my professional lifetime, this was the biggest challenge we faced. And again, this disruption in the supply chain, I'm sure affected you more than any other company, because your main business is supply chain. Do you have any specific moment that you remember that your chartering planes made a huge difference? Or what was like the best steps you took, or is there anything you would do different if it happens again?
Oof, that is a good question. I think what we underestimated were maybe some of the, how do we say, the successive effects that actually came out of COVID, for example, right? If your air freight capacity is down, that's an easy, immediate impact that you obviously feel and that you also think about. If we now switch to ocean supply chains, it's not only that, let's say, we had certain ports closed and Suez, what everybody heard about, but of course, what was also heavy impacted was really the land side operation, because the ports were not properly manned with all the manpower that they normally have, because either people were sick or they were not coming, or they also had to basically do the social distancing, etc. So loading and unloading didn't happen. We couldn't move the equipment fast enough out of the ports. Containers took a lot longer for the turnaround, because then also went to distribution centers and went to warehouses. There was not the same amount of people available to unload them. So therefore, let's say we are faced with container shortage and container capacity problems, etc. So I think we were very clear about the imminent, because that was in our face. No, we had that, we were confronted with that immediate, but to really think through, look at it really end to end, and understand the full impact that could potentially arise out of a crisis like that, out of a pandemic like that. I think that's all of us, the industry, I think that we underestimate.
Wonderful. You know, like you talked about impact, and I believe, first of all, congratulations. You mentioned you mobilized about 30,000 people to work remotely, and that's almost like half of your workforce. And you referred to it that in 2019, you had put everything on the cloud and more digitalization. I mean, that's quite frankly a miracle to be able to have 30,000 people work differently. And I am kind of asking, do you think some of this effects of COVID will be with us forever? One is this remote working. The second one, like in near shoring, you know, like now we suddenly realize that, you know, if you have a chip shortage in Germany or in Detroit, suddenly the whole auto industry will be paralyzed. What long-term effect do you think this will have in different industry? And can you point out, in your opinion, what would they be if you had a crystal ball?
Yeah, definitely. We will definitely see these effects. Some coming out of COVID and out of the pandemic. Some, of course, also say quite frankly, also out of, let's say, other trade actions, no, that we're obviously seeing between China and the US, for example, between some of these trading blocks, what is happening there in regards to protectionism. So I think we're currently at the moment having combination of factors that are really driving companies to rethink their supply chains. And we will therefore, in our opinion, I mean, with the connectivity that we're seeing today, where everything is talking to everything, so obviously, let's say semiconductors, chips, etc., are such a strategically important ingredient now into almost anything, right? That we have in our lives, so that they are regions and yeah, countries, I think, will get very, very protective around it. No? If you basically see North America, how they're investing to build up their own chip industry, for example, if you see also European Union, some of the investments that they are requesting from some of these big providers and builders in Europe, etc. So that is definitely something that we will see. Medical equipment, medical provisions, etc. Definitely something that we will also see where regions and countries will get a lot more strategic about, that they will never again be in a situation where they will either not be able to provide their population with protective gear, etc. But the same will also go about other medical supplies, medical equipment. I mean, people always underestimate, right? We talk about vaccine distribution. Yes, the vaccine is there, but we also need the needles, we need the syringes, we need everything else. And you underestimate all of a sudden, if you need to vaccinate tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people, that obviously also the simplest things, right? All of a sudden are not available anymore. There are shortages in supply chains. So also medical industry, medical equipment, and also yeah, pandemic prevention, for example, is certainly something that countries will look very, very different at. And then if you ask me, last but not least, it's of course also anything that has to do with energy going forward around, right? Whether that is batteries, whether that is electrification, whether that is manufacturing and development of clean fuel, right? Because these will be very, very strategic, very important topics for industrialization for any country, any group, any continent going forward.
Yes, you know, in fact, that is a great segue to our next subject, you know, because this showed us how the whole world is so connected and interdependent to each other. And this kind of brings us to sustainability and trying to have a better world for all of us, you know, because if we now realize that if COVID hits one country, very soon will hit another one. And now I believe the whole world is looking at sustainability and clean energy and different, initiatives. Can you share with us some of the initiatives you are taking in, electrification, maybe fuel cell or other technologies for your business?
Mhm. Yeah, of course. Happy to. I mean, we're basically driving a lot of initiatives, a lot of projects at the moment, because it's of course a lot of learning at the moment that we need to undertake to also see what works, what doesn't work, what are the implications to our operation, right? How do we really let's say put this into our supply chain? So one, for example, we were the first ones that basically put a flight where we substitute the kerosene that the flight needs, let's say to 100% with sustainable aviation fuel. So we have a flight between Frankfurt, Shanghai, and back, the 777 freighter. Just that also maybe for the audience here. So for that flight, Frankfurt, Shanghai, Frankfurt, that freighter needs 175 tons of fuel. In massive amount. And actually, we're 100% neutralizing that flight because we're feeding the equivalent amount of 100% CO2 neutral aviation fuel back into the tanking system, into the refueling system in Frankfurt. So that is one. And we want to see basically, I mean, what is willingness of customers to go down that route with us, to basically how do we do the certification? How do we do the credit back to our customers? Electrification, of course, a massive topic for us. It's no secret, we're the largest land operator in Europe by far. And we're on the one side, of course, we have a responsibility as a company to do our business in the most sustainable way. But of course, we're equally also faced with upcoming regulations and restrictions. No more access to diesel trucks in inner cities, for example, Paris coming up 2024. And we need to find alternatives. So also here, almost any electric truck model that is coming out and that is available in the market, we try to get our hands to, we try to access to also understand how they operate. So we at the moment have a couple of hundred of those running, and we're also doing the first tests now with hydrogen, with the fuel cells, because quite frankly, we have a hard time seeing that electric trucks will be able really to carry the weight of the long distances. For once, because of the weight of the batteries, right? It heavily impacts, for example, the loads that these trucks can carry, but also the availability really of longer distances that is really restrictive to us. We have a lot of different lighthouse projects and initiatives that we're driving, like I said, to really learn and understand what works and doesn't work, then really see what can we sustainably and long-term really include into our operating model and our execution.
Very good. I like little antidote stories. When we launched a big project in Stuttgart with mobility and connectivity and electrification, I remember I asked Dr. Seche, at that time the CEO of Mercedes, why did you invest $50 million in Tesla? And number one, he told me, Saeed, it was a good business decision. But number two, our industry kind of needed a wake-up call to sort of expedite change faster. And, my God, did they really get a wake-up call? Considering Tesla's valuation and success. Do you feel like the whole trucking, van, the last mile delivery, do you think that wake-up call has been already there, or just that the industry still needs a little shake-up and a little bit more I mean, as you said, there is a, I mean, like I was in London last week and there was shortage of fuel because they said there is not enough truck drivers that want to go to London or to UK because it's harder to get tested. It's harder to, you know, because of the Brexit. So there is always going to be change and challenges in transportation. But do you think we have had, you know, our wake-up call for expediting, speeding up change in the trucking industry, for example?
I think we're in the middle of it, I would say. We're in the middle of getting that wake-up call. Why? Because what we're seeing in the UK is, of course, an extreme situation of driver shortage, capacity shortage, etc. But on a maybe more manageable scale, it's no different in most of the other markets. On the European continent, it's a similar situation. Like I said, not so pronounced. In North America, it's a similar situation. We are faced with driver shortage, and we need to find answers on how do we want to deal with that in the future. And there's of course a lot of technology and development innovation that goes into that, right? Obviously around just pure vehicle innovation, autonomous driving, platooning that we tested some 2 years ago, etc. So how do we get either more productivity out of the drivers? How can we maybe do certain parts of the journey entirely without? People always say, well, but this will cost the truck drivers their jobs. No, I mean, just look at the situation as it is. We will not be able to uphold the supply chains, the delivery models, etc., if we don't substitute this with innovative technology and bring these things in. Data, for example. I mean, we haven't maximized, let's say, the use of data, for example. Let me give you a very simple example. France. And I just make that very simple now for calculation purposes. So we operate about, let's say, 3,000 delivery vehicles every day in France. Let's just say at an average, they make 17 stops, 18 stops, something like that, maybe a little bit more. What we have done now, we have basically fed every little bit of data that we collect during the day, during their trips, about traffic congestion, about even traffic lights, about delivery times, waiting times, everything else that we have, the databases we have put our data scientists on it, and constantly every day about data that we have picked up on today, optimize the routes for tomorrow. Because if we manage to just increase the vehicles that we have, if we manage to increase one stop a day, we take 150 trucks off the road. Right? That is sustainable operation, right? Traffic, there's nothing better than traffic avoidance, right? So if we manage that, if we're able to do that and scale that on a larger, that is what really, I think, can help to make a difference. And these are the type of things we're working on.
Wonderful. You know, in fact, it's amazing. Before you use the example of France and the 3,000 vehicles and doing like 18 stops, I was going to share with you, you know, in supply chain and logistic, Walmart asked us to open an office in Bentonville, and we do about 20 pilots with them per year. And in the first group of companies we took to Bentonville, there was 2 digital software analytic companies, one called Project 44, and the second one was called Platform Science. And the Walmart logistical team mentioned to me, Said, we operate 10,000 trucks, roughly 9,800. And exactly like what you said, they were able to optimize for about 5% more productivity, just analyzing the data and applying machine learning and implementing like better route, better stops. How do you, or how does this digitalization of freight forwarding, do you think it's going to help the world? And again, I think if we become more efficient, that also helps sustainability or reducing the carbon footprint. Can you share with us some of the initiatives you are taking with your clients and what more can be done with having total visibility in product and carbon footprint between yourself, your clients, maybe even all the way to the retailer and the consumer?
You're absolutely correct, Said. I mean, one of the I think most important levers that we will have is really visibility throughout the supply chain, starting with the consumer behavior, and then basically working it back to better, let's say, predictive analytics as to what volumes will be needed where by when. I mean, to really much better understand consumer behavior, buying patterns, etc., better steer inventories. That is one. How do we then align supply chains against that? Because what we are seeing many times is, for example, we're flying in freight from wherever it is. It goes in some to our warehouses, and sits there. It sits there for days and days and days, weeks sometimes, until there's really a demand. It gets pulled and is really eventually actually going into a customer or is potentially purchased. Right? That makes no sense. If we look at, for example, the situation today in ocean freight, one of the biggest issues we're struggling with is port congestion. Look at Long Beach, for example. I mean, one of the most congested ports in the world. So I have a ship that comes out of Shanghai, for that matter, steams at 17 knots for I don't know how many days, just to then arrive in Long Beach and basically sit there for a day and a half because it cannot enter the port. Right? If there's better visibility as to how would the flow be, if there would be better connectivity, that vessel also could have steamed with maybe 12 or 13 knots and really arrive at the moment when it can actually enter the port, be serviced, move out. And I think there's significant opportunity there on a global scale to make that a lot more efficient, to connect that better, and through that really improve the sustainability, the CO2 footprint of transport.
Excellent. In fact, at Plug and Play, we work with big shipping line companies. We are now lately working with the ports, like Port of Savannah. We are launching an innovation platform, and Salar mentioned in Antwerp. Not only we work with the shipping lines, but also with the Port of Antwerp. Quite frankly, we call this open innovation, where different parties that touch the cargo need to communicate better together, need to share not private information, but share data and information together to make the process better, faster, and hopefully cheaper and more environmentally friendly. What do you think you could help as a sort of very large operator to promote this open innovation? And is your clients and your suppliers, are they open to the idea of open innovation?
Yes, I think they are. I mean, for once, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I mean, solving or improving in particular, let's say, CO2 footprint of global supply chains of our industries is a topic that no matter how big we are, or DHL or UPS or whoever else you want to talk to, can solve on our own, right? I mean, we need collaboration across the industry, across competitors, across players, with our customers, etc., with the ports, if we really want to make a dent into this challenge and really drive that forward. Whether we like it or not, there's absolutely no way that we can solve that I can solve that with DB Schenker alone. It's not even going to move the needle. So I think we're all starting to understand that this is an absolute necessity. And secondly, I think there's a lot of information today, and also, let's say, applications, software out there, which is in principle already a commodity today. No? I mean, so, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to make supply chains more efficient by really using commodity tools. For example, right? Look at here in Europe, for example, look at the driver app or something like that, where let's say we give the driver the information, where he goes, where he needs to pick up, the documentation, everything else is. I mean, why does he need to have an app from Schenker, one from DHL, one from Kühne, one from UPS, one from, I don't know who else he's driving. Just very, very basic things now, right? But I mean, they're really things that could simplify that. Data interaction, data exchange, for example, is another one, right? That could really make visibility, a lot more data, a lot more accessible to a lot more players in the industry, help steering that faster, taking out waiting times, inefficiencies, and through that really make a difference to CO2. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, again, I believe it's not somebody winning and somebody losing. It's when you collaborate in an open innovation platform, you actually take real cost and real time out of the challenge. You know, I recall in Stuttgart, we worked with Porsche for their Cayenne bumpers, with Motherson, which is one of the big injection molders, and with BASF, the plastic supplier, and with a startup called Circular to calculate the carbon footprint of this part of Porsche. And if it was not that collaboration, would be impossible to, number one, to measure, number two, try to reduce the carbon footprint. So I really would love to let some of the people in the audience to join us, join DB Schenker in this open innovation collaboration. I think it's going to help everybody, as well as it's going to help our environment.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're very open to that, to support it, to test it, and also to be a partner in that development. You know? Because we have a lot of, how can we say, use cases where we can also test open innovation, right? Whether it's our operations, whether it's our terminals, whether it's our warehouses. We have some of the greatest companies in the world that we can call our customers, and everybody is looking, of course, for improvements in their supply chain, for improvements in the CO2 footprint, for efficiency gains, etc. So I think there is a very good platform and ecosystem that we can potentially build, and we're testing a lot of the things, because also I'm not always satisfied, let's say, with the approach, for example, that also some of the currently existing larger players are taking. Just look at, again, electric trucks. Right? Because out of economic interest, some of the largest manufacturers, what do they do today? They take a truck that is built out of what? 10 tons of steel, basically slap a battery on and say, look, here's your electric truck. Right? I mean, that can obviously not be the solution. So we really need smart innovation here, new companies that take a new look at it and really say, well, what do let's say, purpose-built vehicles around that really look like? And there's a couple of companies we're actually testing with, we're supporting, where we're buying their vehicles, where we're trying it out, helping to developing, helping to improve them, etc. So there's really something out that helps the industry, because otherwise we're not going to make it. We're not going to tackle it.
Wonderful. Before I turn it into Salar for question and answer, I love your idea of the 10 ton of steel and adding battery to it and saying, here is the electric truck. I know you've been involved with Volocopter. Can you, and that's a little bit more futuristic project. Where do you see like this future of drone delivery going? And I recall 5 years ago, we did a project with Swiss Post where they delivered product to some of the mountain area in Switzerland, which is very remote. And it actually works. It is like more economical to send a drone than to send a truck up to the mountain. Where do you think this futuristic stuff has a role in our lives?
Yeah. Well, I think it can really play a role, because also other than most of the drones that we have seen so far, the Volo drone is really what is called a bit heavy, a heavy lift drone, right? It's supposed to carry up to 150 kilos, etc. But you're right, remote areas, islands, for example, right? I mean, if we look at Scandinavia, the archipelagos outside of Oslo, outside of Stockholm, for example, right? Where today we need to take very, very long routes with truck over different bridges and islands. It takes us forever to get there. It could be a lot more efficient to deliver, for example. Anything that is offshore wind parks, let's say ship to shore, whatever, oil exploration that we're seeing offshore, which is today also the service and many times large vessels, etc. We can really increase the frequency here. And of course, also what we look at is, let's say, middle mile. It's too large, too heavy for really last mile to consumer, but to feed very efficiently electric, and for example, small distribution hubs in the cities from where then a much more efficient last mile operation could be implemented. That is, for example, also something where we see the drone. And as a matter of fact, it is not, well, it is futuristic, but as a matter of fact, next week, we will have the first live proof of concept in Hamburg of the ITS, where the drone will actually take an active flight with cargo, where we will, for once, really show it will take actually a flight. It will go out all the way there of Hamburg. And basically, we will do final delivery and actually really show and prove what that drone can actually do.
That is incredible. A real live pilot.
Correct.
That is great. That is great. And again, I remember about 10, 15 years ago when one of my good friends bought the first Tesla, or like actually was the first 10 Tesla. And everybody said these numbers are so small, it will never make a dent into the auto industry. But now we can really see that the impact Tesla has had in the auto industry, and you know, the pioneers are the ones that make the biggest challenge come true and then the biggest impact. And we look forward to working with you to pioneer a lot of new ideas. Please, I turn it to you, Salar, for some Q&A.
Thank you, Said. Thank you, Jochen, for joining us and for this very enlightening and interesting conversation. It was a pleasure listening to you. And we got a couple of questions, actually. Jochen, you were mentioning that at the very beginning, when you were speaking about connecting the government to the procurement departments of your clients in order to kind of give the know-how and connect the know-how a little bit to each other, and you coming in as the facilitator on the logistics side. It seems to me that also innovation and kind of preparing for the future means also questioning a little bit your role as a logistic company in between all of these stakeholders. Recently, in order to kind of be ready for the future, you have launched your CVC. How is that kind of, can you give a glimpse of the future way of DB Schenker in connection of preparing for the future with this CVC a little bit to us?
Yes, happy to. Yes, we have launched Schenker Ventures in August. And the whole idea is that we actually want to create a platform for innovation and for startups where we give, let's say, maximum founders freedom and maximum entrepreneurial freedom for startups and company builders, while at the same time, let's say, giving them also a platform where we can support in creating ideas, building ideas, giving them opportunities for testing and developing products and probing them right away in our business, in our facilities, in our operations. If where necessary, also at very, very early stage, come in with some seed and some funding so that there, some of these ideas can basically be carried forward. So we don't want to, we want to be a vehicle as a supporter, but the idea is really that we do what we're very, very good at, and that the founders and the venture builders are really doing what they are very, very good at. So it's really about having good ideas and then finding good entrepreneurs, good builders, good founders that really then try to build these ventures and carry them forward. We normally, corporates are not the best right, in doing these type of setups, and neither are we. We kill them with our administration, we kill them with our regulations, we kill them, right, with our restrictions and guidelines, etc. And that we want to set up with.
Very interesting. I think you mentioned a couple of very the challenges that we also hear from the startup ecosystem, and also the topics that we try to work with our various partners in order to kind of build that fundamental ground in order to let innovation in. And I think this the Schenker venture vehicle, we are all excited to see the future of that and how that develops. In connection with that topic, in general, innovation, and one of the digitalization, one of the questions from the audience was maybe also, was it a reason to go towards this direction of the Schenker Ventures topic? Has the pandemic ensured that the digitalization of the logistics industry has been accelerated? Have you made any direct decisions after such a this let's call it a little shock?
Well, of course it has changed, and there's no doubt about it. And it starts with the simplest things, which are not now very specific to logistics, right? It's of course, I mean, the way we operate now, like I said, the way we work now with our colleagues. I mean, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, could I imagine that we're doing real operations? No, I mean, head office, etc. is always different, but real, the rubber hits the road in our branches operations, whether we can do that remotely somehow, I absolutely not, right? I did not see that possible. I did not see that. And secondly, yes, for example, what did the pandemic also do? We developed, for example, a device where you can actually, as a receiver of freight, do a proof of delivery. So basically, where you can sign without even having to be close to the device, right? So for social distancing, so that you don't need to be close, you can do it out of a distance. So that was, for example, also something that we developed with a startup, so that we can also be, let's say, or that it is safer for our drivers, etc., when they need to deliver the final freight. So there were definitely certain initiatives and developments that came really out of the different types of operation and the challenges that the pandemic brought. Yes.
Absolutely agree. I think also in our personal day-to-day, we see that social distancing has an effect of us, and on the technologies how we all use now, also probably more mobile payment and all of these technologies. The pandemic, as Said has said, the pandemic has shown how we are all basically in the world, how connected we are, because at the same time we were affected by the same thing, a disease. Yeah, so and everybody was affected. And one disease that is also affecting the whole world, let's call it a disease, is the global warming, the climate change. Yeah, and as you both of you have kind of shown in this case, how important these two topics have become in the past 2 years, how more important and how more visible they have become, because we finally felt how connected we are, and we are living on the same planet. So we all have to work together. In this regard, a little question towards Said. Can you tell us a little bit about the projects that you do in the fields of sustainability and the interconnections, such as the work you do with an alliance? Can you share some info on that?
Yes, I think Jochen referred to this, that some of the challenges and problems of the world are not possible to solve by one company. Let's say that even if you are Walmart or Pepsi or ExxonMobil or Shell. So we are very pleased to work with Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which is a consortium of the 50 largest companies in the world, including Procter and Gamble, Unilever, etc., that we would love to find the best entrepreneurs, the best technology, do a proof of concept like Jochen mentioned, because some of these technology and startup, other than money, they need access to large corporations to try their technology at scale. And we feel if the technology works in a pilot at scale, then you need the muscle and the financial power of large company to execute it globally. So we are very, very happy with our work. We run right now 6 innovation platform for the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And we are involved with more than 50 pilots this year. And we really are, like, I do travel a lot socially, and I go to some remote places with in the ocean. And it's really, really sad to see the amount of plastic and the garbage around the world. And again, we need the whole world to come together to fight climate change and, you know, reducing the plastic waste in the world. And again, we are very pleased to play a part in that. And I invite everybody from the audience that if you don't know about this program, please join us. It is, I believe, one of a kind in the world to have, you know, every one of the large companies has committed the first tranche, $50 million to this project.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you for this insight. I think some of the key facts that we can get out of this conversation today has shown that we have to work all closer together. Transparency is a big topic, and collaboration is a big topic on the fields of efficiency, sustainability as well. There's a lot of opportunity. I heard yesterday during one of the keynotes in Antwerp that logistics is not backward. It's just super complicated. And today it has shown that the various companies around the world, including DB Schenker, they are open for innovation. They are thriving for innovation and want to bring that in order to optimize processes, in order to reduce kind of traffic and become more sustainable. But it's just super, super complex. And it requires not only one company, as Jochen said, because he alone cannot change the world, but it requires a consortium, a work together of multiple stakeholders along the supply chains. With that, I would really like to thank you for joining us today, taking the time and opening up. I think we have way more questions, but I would really like to respect your time, and I would, any final comments or any final, things you would like to share with the audience?
Please, Jochen, go ahead first.
Yeah, look, first of all, obviously, thank you for coming in and listening to our conversation. Secondly, I cannot emphasize more what you said, Anna, and we also don't how can I say, assume or take the right that we know it all, and therefore platforms like Plug and Play are so incredibly important, right? I mean, if we don't find platforms and areas where we can come together, look at problems that we're all somehow facing, and trying to get the best and brightest together to tackle them and to solve them, try new ideas. I mean, go out there and look and fail and try again and fail and try again, and eventually we will come up with something that makes a difference. Therefore, I'm really, really glad that we're part of this network. I'm very glad that we are having this opportunity here to cooperate, because again, you said it, and I don't want to repeat. Only if the large companies come together with, let's say, new innovators, with very, very bright, aggressive, smart entrepreneurs, founders, startups, I think we have an opportunity to really make a difference. And this is why we're really, really glad we're here.
Thank you so much, Jochen. And, you know, I really enjoyed your comments in general, but specifically the one that you say we need to look at the customer needs and work everything backward. And now I believe, from where I am, from Silicon Valley, you know, the consumer demands more, and, you know, it doesn't matter if it's social network, if it's communication, if it's, you know, personalization. So I really look forward to working together, during this digital transformation of supply chain and logistic, and for all of us to come together to make a much bigger impact. And again, thank you so much for being part of our journey together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It was absolutely an exciting conversation. Maybe as in terms of what's coming up next from our side, from Plug and Play, there are 3 exciting next topics that I would like to share with you. Please message us in case you would like to understand more. Next week, the ITS Congress in Hamburg. We are about to do a little networking get together around our H2 startup accelerator that we are hopefully launching by November. If you would like to understand more about that, please feel free to get in touch with us. Then on October 19th, we have our supply chain fall summit. Please join us for our expo. It's going to be very exciting to hear about our activities in the United States. And then finally, November 18th, you're all invited to our Hamburg Expo, the European Supply Chain Expo, including a special keynote, maybe from someone who was here today. So thank you very much for joining us today. Stay safe, stay healthy still, and looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully soon in November in Hamburg. Thanks a lot and stay safe.